this is Alex with WaveWare. I'm going to be showing you how to set up an Inovonics input and a tap output and connect them together on your Mars mobile alert response system. First, to define the data input for an Inovonics input, you go to Inputs and Outputs and Data Inputs, and then you click to add a new data input. Just name it Inovonics. And then the input interface, you can choose, for Inovonics it'll generally be a serial input, but some other input protocols allow you to choose an Ethernet input interface. I'm going to choose USB 1, and the USB ports are labeled on the outside of the unit, and so those are keyed to specific ports on the unit. So USB 1 refers to a specific USB port on the front of the Mars. And I'm going to select the protocol to be Inovonics. Since we're setting this up as a straight pass-through, we need to specify where we want those Inovonics messages to go. And to do that, we can specify a to list and a maint list. So the to list is basically the list of destination IDs that we want the Inovonics devices to go to. So since we're sending to a tap output, we'll be using pager IDs. In this case, we'll use pager ID 101 as the to list. And then the maint list, which is essentially the same as the to list, but for alerts involving the Inovonics low batteries and tamper alerts. We'll have those sent to pager ID 102. And now that that's set up, we can set up the data output for the tap output. So now additionally in the outputs, we add a new data output, and we'll set it as tap out. The output interface will be Ethernet, because we'll be using this Ethernet paging system at .195. So I can set the IP address to 192.168.10.195, which is the IP address of my paging system. And for the settings, I'll set the port equal to 3101, which I happen to know from is the input port on this particular paging system. Then I set the protocol to tap, since it's currently using the tap paging protocol. Now that we have the input set up as Inovonics, the output set up as tap, I will create a new data connection, and we'll set that one as Inovonics to tap. All right, so now what we want to do is define a connection. We go to Inputs and Outputs and Data Connections and click to add a new data connection. We're going to set it up to be the Inovonics into the tap out. We'll set the input to Inovonics and then the output to tap out. So now that we have that set up, we need to bring in our Inovonics central receiver. So for that, we'll go to Facility Wireless Receivers. And now I'm going to plug in my Inovonics central receiver. And then I'm going to plug its input into USB 1. So now if you notice, when I plugged it in, it actually does wait until it receives Inovonics signals, and we have Inovonics receivers going pretty much all the time in the office. But in order to cause this receiver record to show up, you need to activate and then deactivate an Inovonics device. So take one of your, say, call cords or one of your pendants. After you've taken the central receiver and plugged it in, activate the call cord and then deactivate the call cord, and then when you refresh this page, you should see your central receiver show up on this list. Now what you'll want to do is change the name to whatever, essentially whatever you want. The repeaters will also show up in this list, and we have the ability of of the Inovonics device, including their location data based on the nearest repeater or receiver. So these names can actually be useful for identifying where in the building these receivers are. Currently, I'll set this one to central receiver. And then what's important is once you've set that, you want to set the behavior to Inovonics. That essentially turns on the receiver. And say you have a number of repeaters on the list. If you have a repeater that's next door, you're capable of, by changing the behavior to unassigned or leaving the behavior at unassigned, the system will ignore any signals coming from that repeater so that you don't get strange data or location data that's incorrect. So once the receiver's been set up and the behavior's been set to Inovonics, you can go to Alert Sources to Inovonics Sensors. Now, once this has been set up, I'm again going to exercise my Inovonics input. So I'm going to activate my call cord, which I'm doing now. And then once that cord has been activated, and then I refresh this list, actually 2 have shown up on this list. The device check-ins will also cause devices to show up on this list. And again, we have numerous devices in the environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the serial number on the device, and the last 4 is 7366, which means that the device that I'm holding is this one right here. I'm going to change the name to test pendant because it's an Inovonics pendant. Then I'm going to change the class. Now this, similar to the behavior in the wireless receivers, allows you to turn this particular pendant on or off. If the pendant is set to either fixed or mobile, the pendant is on. A fixed means do not include location data, and mobile means to include location data. So generally fixed will be wall-mounted call cords, whereas mobile will be pendants and things that you'd like to know where they went off in addition to the fact that they've gone off. Unassigned essentially turns the device off, and Wonder is used for some of our other sensors that allow you to identify whether or not someone is passing through a particular door, but for the Inovonics input is unused. So currently we're going to set this to mobile since it is a pendant. And then since we've changed the name to test pendant, that's the name that's actually going to be sent into the system when we fire off the alert. So now that we have it set up appropriately, what I'm going to do is send an activation for the Inovonics pendant. And now what we'll be able to do is, if you go to Setup and Utilities, and then you go to the Data I/O log. The Data I/O log shows all of the input and output logging for all the serial interfaces and all of the protocols. And then you go down to the very end of the list, you'll see here with the core system has started, you'll see the Inovonics input information, the tap output protocol information. Then you'll also see the login sequence for the tap output, so that, carriage return ID equals and so forth. Then you can see that we have received a message from Inovonics, which is this particular message, test pendant at central receiver. And the cancel value is 0, meaning that it came on. And now you can see that we've paged out to our tap output this same value, test pendant at central receiver, which is the name of the pendant at, and then the name of the receiver that it was received on. And then you can see the full data of the tap out, including all of the special characters and the checksum. Which gives you good ability to troubleshoot in case there's some incompatibility with the system. So that is pretty much the basics of doing a simple input to output connection for the Mars system, and most inputs and outputs will work this way. They each have their own settings, which are explained to a good bit in the manual or on this page itself, but that is the general idea. So this is Alex with WaveWare. Thanks for listening.